Kelsey, take your countdown.
Okay, from what? Five, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's now 6:30. We're here for a planning board meeting. The agenda is primarily taken up with 550 King, the stormwater review and the site plan phase 1. Our agenda as board business. Do we have any minutes? We do. We do? Did anyone look at them? I haven't either. So let's table that. Maren prepared a budget for fiscal year 27, which was distributed to us. I didn't have any comments on it. Did anyone else?
So we presented that at the Joint Finance Committee Select Board meeting last night. So responded to a few general questions from those members, and then the town will get feedback. The departments will get feedback throughout the process.
Okay, and you had mentioned we should mention that Lucia is retiring.
Yes, Lucia is retiring, and we're in the process of interviewing for a replacement for somebody who can do planning and building.
Okay. The next item is public input. I would ask that this be limited to issues that aren't related to what we're talking about, because we'll have an opportunity for public comments after presentations. Today, we're going to hear from the various teams and primarily to review peer reviews that we've done. We have peer review for the stormwater, we have peer review for traffic, we have peer review for architecture, and based on our last meeting, there were changes to the architecture which we'll be looking at, and by the end of this meeting, we want to identify all the issues that we need to include in a draft decision, because we want to work toward accomplishing a decision. That being said, we've got some time before the scheduled public hearing. Do we have any comments that we want to bring up about anything else? I'm told that the soft opening for the Northern Bank will be the 2nd, which is next week. I don't know if that's one of my neighbors went to try to open an account and that's what they were told. Soft opening, whatever that means. That was one of the projects that was approved by our board in years past that has been accomplished, and I hope everyone is enjoying the result of that. Anything else? You got anything?
So we attended a regional housing meeting this morning. MAPC, our regional planning agency, convened a meeting of affordable housing trusts, etc. Hamilton was able to share our experience with the homeowner small grant program, and Lexington was able to share their experience with applying for a Mass Works, Housing Works infrastructure grant for a buy down on some affordable units that they're seeing developed in their community. So it was a good time to share notes and learn from each other on that.
One thing that I would mention in your budget request, you are planning ahead for renewing the master plan.
Yes.
And what is the schedule for that, you think?
Well, let's see. Littleton adopted the master plan in 2017. Generally, we consider those good for 10 years. So over the next three or so fiscal years, the town starts setting money aside to update the master plan. Then after those few years, then we'll have enough funding to get started on that. My thought process anyway on that.
Okay. There was a housing production plan, and there was one other. Was there one other?
So requests for CPC funds, one would be for housing production plan. Our housing production plan is from 2014, so it's well out of date. And once we start to understand the housing production that's going to be forthcoming from this development, then it's time to look, ask the community again, what kind of housing does the community want to see built over the next several years. And it provides an opportunity to have that conversation and do the outreach.
So the use of it is to identify community concerns, or is it used for grants, or what is the use of it?
So several things. As you know, the benefit of most planning studies is the process to produce the study, gather the stakeholders, and get input on what the community would like to see. But then the report itself is also useful because you can point to it as you're applying for grants, et cetera. If the community has a housing production plan in place, then you get a few bonus points, for lack of a better word, on upcoming grants.
Okay. And was there another?
Affordable Housing Trust will be requesting CPC funding to bring the rental assistance program back up to full funding. That's an ongoing program.
I don't know if the town-wide knows about the rental assistance program. Can you just quickly?
Yeah, so residents that are in rental units across the town, when they reach out to Elder and Human Services for assistance, one of the ways that the town can assist is through the rental assistance program. It is geared towards lower income residents who are having trouble meeting their rental each month, and if household qualifies, then the landlord can receive up to $500 per month for a year, potentially renewable for up to 3 years, depending on qualifications and et cetera. So far, that program has, since it started several years ago, has assisted, we believe, 44 different households.
How many years ago was it?
For 5 years?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And some of the time frame, the town was able to use federal funds to cover that cost.
Okay, it's now 6:40. If we can go forward with the continued public hearing. It seems like, based on the Zoom, we're going to hear first from the stormwater peer review. Is that the case?
I think that Morgan would like to kick it off
Yeah,
with their
right.
presentation, and
Sure.
then we'll get back to the peer reviews after.
That works. That's great. Mr. Chair, members of the board, thank you so much for hosting us again. I'm Morgan Pearson with Lipoli Companies. Try to keep it brief and hand it off to different team members who can introduce themselves. Before I jump in, I just want to acknowledge a few other people that have joined us tonight. Mary Lipoli DiDonato and her husband Mike DiDonato, both part of the company. Sal Lipoli Jr. is here, Gary Armstrong as well. So we brought the whole squad once again, and we thank you for the special meeting and keeping the momentum on our first phase of the retail. I think as Chair Yates mentioned, our intent tonight is to show you the progress we've made. At the last meeting, we spoke to a lot of the things we've heard and a lot of the changes we intended to make. So we're excited to show you those, as well as talk about the stormwater and the traffic, and anything else the board would like to discuss. Before we jump into that, I wanted to just a couple of housekeeping things that there's no slides necessary for. Very happy to announce that we submitted just this evening for the residential part of the project. So that's you will see that shortly, but that is something we promised we would get the board and the town, and so that's a big move forward for the project as well. 318 units, yes.
Can I interrupt for 1 second? So for the people here, we're going to be opening those hearings. It would be similar to this stormwater review and site plan review. We're going to be opening those hearings on the 12th, February 12th, and it will be in this room.
Excellent.
That's a special
right. Appreciate that. Another item I wanted to mention to the board is that part of our team was able to join the BPAC meeting last week, and that was beneficial to our team to hear some of the comments made at that meeting, and wanted to reiterate our desire to focus on some of the intersections that are part of our offsite mitigation, and just acknowledge that we understand how important that is to the town, given the very unfortunate recent fatality along King Street. So you're happy that our team could join that meeting. Next, I would just, as a sort of a heads up, as a reminder, one of the things I mentioned at the last meetings that we were going to show as an illustration, the town green, something that in the past we had just not shown because our intention is and still is to present that formally to the board under a separate application. You're going to see it tonight. I just want to preface that it is a draft. It is part of the evolution. It's purely being shown to illustrate a lot of to be responsive to some of the feedback we've received. So I would just ask the board and the community to keep that in mind. And then I'll just sort of move into a couple of other things that are important to lay the groundwork for before we jump into the more fun stuff. Over the last month or so, we have heard in different ways from the community and others that there was this sort of perception that what we were proposing was vastly different. That was when it was approved. I mentioned this last meeting. I won't dwell on it too much, but it's just important for everyone to see this. This is what was approved by the board and the community. Went through a rigorous process for master plan approval, most recently in June of 2024. The outline here shows what this phase is. And the buildings along King Street, so much of it is nearly identical. And again, I just wanted to level set with all the folks that might not be as intimately involved as the board members and of course our team. So just reiterating that. Again, another reiteration is that there was a desire by our team and I think others to have parking along King Street. And some folks may have heard this last time. Again, I want to reiterate it that Mass DOT owns and controls King Street and Great Road. They specifically asked us to remove the parking on King Street as part of the MEPA process that was approved last year, and we complied, as one can imagine. So again, just that these are the facts. People should just be aware of them. It's not something that we did unilaterally. Lastly, just to tee up the group before Chris joins and speaks to some of the traffic and the stormwater. The last time I spoke, I think the message was that we were searching for a balance. This is the balance between the viability of the retail, and we're going to hear from our retail expert tonight as well. We brought Jeremy Grossman here to speak to the community, and the balance between that and of course, the feedback we've heard from this board and the community about form-based code and activating King Street. And I'm happy to say that I believe tonight we will show you that we've found that balance. And I guess I would just say that my hope and the takeaway from the community and the board tonight is that the message now is that we've listened, and we hope that that comes through our presentation. So with that, I'll give it to Chris Raymond.
Thank you, Morgan. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board, for having me here this evening. Great to see you all again. My name is Chris Raymond from TEC. So before we jump into actually some of this exciting site plan review updates that we have for you tonight, I did just want to reiterate this plan here. We are also, in addition to the site plan approval, seeking approval for minor modification to the subdivision plans. This is to help facilitate the phase 1 development as well as the surrounding infrastructure. And you can see, as shown on the graphic here, the highlighted in gray, it's a little washed out with the lights, but highlighted in gray is the extent of the phase 1 development that's being proposed. And you can see the existing property lines shown in black, and then highlighted in red are the proposed modifications.
Could you please speak up?
We can't hear you very well.
Sorry. Yeah, so highlighted here in gray is the extent of the phase 1 commercial development that we're proposing. Shown in black is are the existing property lines, and highlighted in red are what we're seeking to amend with some minor modifications. So that is just it's a simple process, or it's simply just a process that we need to go through to actually move these property lines, and specifically going through this definitive subdivision process so that we can modify the right-of-way lines.
I know we moved the podium,
But the microphone's up in the ceiling over there. So can we move the podium
That way?
that way? I'm not sure how you want to handle that.
I don't think the community still needs to hear.
It's very small.
Do it.
That's great, thank you.
Sorry, Chris.
It's okay. All right, so that's the definitive subdivision update.
I want to change the lighting, people wanted to see better.
It's always me.
Flip back on the right of ways for just a second.
Right,
Yeah.
somebody was gonna hit movie over
So-
here, right?
Yeah, movie.
Yep, great.
The timing on the right of way changes,
Yep.
is that a separate process, or they really need to be done at the same time any of the building sizes are definitized, right?
Yeah, it's a separate process. So nothing on this process does not change anything that we're proposing as part of the development. It's simply the mechanism to adjust the property lines.
Right.
So
But what's not overlaid on there is where the so if you do adjust the size of the buildings, they're not gonna encroach on any of those right of ways? That's what you can't tell, that's from this, where we're at in the process right
yeah,
now.
our current proposal, it doesn't. We're gonna try to color in the lines that we're currently proposing. All right, and then just want to give an update on various peer reviews since the last meeting. So since the last meeting, we were able to get peer reviews from Green International, who peer reviewed both the traffic and the stormwater for the site. We've had the opportunity to meet with a couple members of Green, who I see are here with us on the meeting tonight, which we appreciate you guys being here. We've had the opportunity to meet with them, review their comments, resolve these comments, and we have issued a formal response to them as of last week. So I'm sure they're reviewing that. In addition to the peer review comments from Green, we have also received some great feedback from various town departments and boards, including LELWD, the Board of Health, the Historic Commission, Affordable Housing Trust, and Littleton Fire Department. And we do have a meeting set up with LELWD and the Littleton Fire Department for next week to review their comments. So Now to dive into some of the site plan review updates. One thing we wanted to highlight and emphasize in this presentation, we've heard a few comments on it, is pedestrian access to the site. So this graphic highlights all the pedestrian routes to and from the site from the surrounding areas. Hard to see. Oh, I know. Yeah, the background's a little washed out. There is an aerial on here, I swear. This graphic highlights the pedestrian infrastructure that is currently in place or being proposed to be improved or added as part of our offsite improvements. So you can see here there are routes in place or will be established to in various directions, whether you're coming to or from Westford, to the right side of the screen here, or up to the point over across the bridge from 495. You can see there will be an established route there, and then a lot of pedestrian infrastructure around the common to get us to and from this site from downtown and from the Littleton Common. So we just want to zoom. We just want to zoom in on this a little bit. Again, you can't really see the aerial, but we just wanted to highlight some of the access points. You can see the red circles here. We know that it's important for you guys to have access from King Street. So you can see multiple access points, pedestrian access points along King Street to bring people into the site. And it's really highlighted by, you can see what Morgan kind of teased earlier, the conceptual plan for the town green to the left side here. We know that that's going to be an important pedestrian access to really funnel people into the site, especially coming from downtown in the town green. We want this to be a gateway into the site for people leaving or coming and going from the site to really connect the downtown and the proposed development here. So additionally, this is the bicycle improvements. So you can see the dashed line represents current bike lanes that are in place, and then the solid blue lines are what's represented by improved or added bike lanes as part of the development to really allow bicycle traffic all along King Street and down to Great Road from this development.
The bike paths are within the Mass DOT right away? Correct,
yep. Yeah, except for the ones that are on site there.
Yeah,
on the top.
I'm just the blue ones going down.
Yep. And then in this graphic, we wanted to highlight the offsite improvements that have been identified with Mass DOT. You can see along King Street here, that's where we will be adding bicycle lanes in both directions along the extent of this site. You'll also see highlighted there's 3 pedestrian crossings that we want to incorporate, and we'll work with Mass DOT through final design to figure out where it makes sense and where the safest crossing points will be. But we're required to do 3 of those crossings. We're also going to be incorporating a shared use path along the site side of King Street to allow safe pedestrian access along and travel along the north side of King Street along the site frontage. You can see to the top of the graphic here along Great Road, we'll be extending a sidewalk from the site driveway down to the 495 on-ramp with some pedestrian improvements proposed there. And then at the King Street and Great Road intersection, there'll be pedestrian improvements there, as well as traffic signal retrofit upgrades, and there'll be some timing coordination done with the various lights along Great Road to make sure timings are optimized there as well. And then we'll incorporate curb ramps and upgraded crosswalks. So those are all up to standards, and the pedestrians can feel safe crossing that intersection. And then we have similar down at the Great Road Stevens intersection. There'll be pedestrian improvements there, including upgraded curb ramps and and pedestrian crossings. And then most importantly, as Morgan mentioned, I was able to attend the BPAC meeting last week. We're grateful to get that opportunity. I think a member of the community had invited people at the last meeting, and we thought it was a great opportunity to go hear some of the concerns that the board had, and some of the members of the public had. And it was really highly focused on the intersection at Goldsmith, Stevens, and King Street, which had the unfortunate fatality. And we saw just how important it is to make some upgrades there to make people feel safe when they're traveling in their downtown. It's important for us to make sure that pedestrians coming to and from our site also feel safe. So we are committed to working with DOT to make the necessary improvements at this location to make everyone feel safe. So
just on that new chunk of sidewalk that's gonna go down Great Road there, is that gonna be right at the curb, or is there gonna be the 24, 36-inch berm space between the
we'll be doing
highway and the sidewalk? Because some of the sidewalks are right against the road, and they're very uncomfortable because that's going to be a speed up zone for people going onto the highway.
So conceptually, there's going to be a sidewalk there right now. We have not done the design plans for that, but we will be adjusting the curb line and increasing the sidewalk there. We'll probably, I know there's a guardrail there, so we'll have to work with Mass DOT on where they want.
Yeah, I just think it's something to take into consideration whether you can provide. Again, I don't know if the formal term of that berm space is
like a buffer space.
Yep. So that
Can we pause on this slide and subject for a minute to allow the board to make comments? Carol, you have a comment. Anna, do you have any comments on this scope of work?
On the pedestrian access or
Yes.
everything that they talked about?
This particular slide.
I think my concern still lies over on Great Road. I mean, this whole notion of having a crossing down by the exit ramp is really of concern to me. And I think that if the BPAC is going to be consulted, as this project goes along, I think that will be very helpful.
Truthfully, that wasn't our first spot to present that. We would prefer a mid-block crossing, but when you do look at the safety concerns we have with incorporating that at like our Great Road at our driveway, it becomes a safety concern, and Mass DOT pointed us towards incorporating this crossing here.
So is there going to be a crossing right there at King Street and Great Road?
King Street and Great Road, right at the intersection.
Yep.
Yep, there'll be all new upgrades there.
So I think I would recommend signage that actually directs pedestrians to go to that corner as opposed to trying to cross a highway.
Oh, for sure, yeah, that's a great idea.
Bartlett. Mark? I'm good. My comments would be a couple, a few things we want to accomplish with this aspect of the project. One of them would be to include a town presence along with you and Mass DOT. You have interests, Mass DOT has interests, the town has interests, and it's been this will be part of the decision, and we'd like to set up a town not a member, but a town presence on this process that would consist of the administrator, a selectman, and a planning board designee. And the purpose of this would be to, continue the outreach that you've done with attending the meeting on the 20th. The next thing, and this is also being discussed and may become part of the decision, is that we would like to reintroduce the parking along King Street. But there are certain things that have to happen for that, you know, apparently the town has to take control of that section of King Street. And so we'd have to go through that process. But the DOT doesn't necessarily represent our best interests for this project. And so, you know, the parking there was a good idea to, you know, to enliven that edge. So we'd like to push toward, and that is complicated for you guys because I'd like to see, if we accept this as part of the decision, that you incorporate that potential in whatever landscape plans you have along that stretch.
Yeah, so I do know at the BPAC meeting, I know that advisory committee is working towards maybe producing a letter of sorts to send to DOT, and they have some, or they plan on sending some sort of communication over to DOT with you know, some of their thoughts and ideas, and that is absolutely, we encourage that. If you guys want to directly send some of your comments and ideas to them, we're happy to be involved.
This is what, well, I'm speaking for myself. We can talk among the board when we get to that point, but we would be very interested in, and we, Jim Dugan, the town administrator, has, you know, been in this loop and has some idea about what it would take to accomplish that, essentially override DOT, and it's a town commitment to basically take control of those sections of the roadway, and would also include Great Road. However, we have an interest as we go forward for this entire area to have a little more control over it. We would have more control over speed limits. We'd have more control over street parking, which, you know, would impact, you know, Great Road, further development on Great Road. So anyway, that's gonna, I think we'd like to make that a priority in this process of the traffic mitigation. Okay.
Ready to hand it off?
I guess what I'd suggest, since we don't control that process, right? We could, I think we would, I would say that we probably would write a letter to the Board of Selectmen requesting them to pursue that. But would it be possible, but we can't hold them to an uncommitted timeline.
I agree.
So could you perhaps indicate, you know, what it would look like, sort of an overlay with it, so that we could see what would happen if it did get approved, versus a plan that we can actually execute on in a definitive timeline?
Well, I don't think this is, you know, it's not possible before the decision, you know, before the decision. However, it can be planned for, assuming, you know, well, Anna presented the last meeting examples of neighboring towns where this has happened on DOT state highways. So we think we can do it, and if we could accommodate it, it may just be you have a grassy verge, you know. I also point out that there'll be further development along King Street, which this may, you know, impact. So we can think about how we accomplish that, but that's the point. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, we'll have to look into that, because there obviously is going to also be some right-of-way impacts there as that expands.
We know, but we're just saying this is what we'd like to see, and we can figure out how to get there.
Yep.
Do you want to move on?
Yeah, good to go. Yeah. All right. I'm going to hand it over to Joe Ficocello to talk about landscaping and the pedestrian experience.
Good evening. My name is Joe Ficacello. I am a senior landscape architect at Alverson Ty and Bond. We are the landscape consultant on the design team, and I'm also a resident at One Buffalo. So first we're going to start off just kind of an overall, kind of reiterating or becoming familiar again with the main parts of the pedestrian realm of the project. So we have our main spine kind of working through the center there as one area, and then we have our green, which would just be kind of right off to the left of the screen there. We have, of course, King Street, the King Street edge, and then between building 1400 and 1500, we have our little Vest Pocket Park. So tonight we're going to focus on King Street and the changes we made. And if you kind of like look up at the top image and quickly look down, look up, look down, focus on King Street, hopefully what'll start to bleed through is what we've been doing there, what we've been working on, based on the comments we've heard from the board and, of course, the community. So if we look at the lower image, or actually, let's stay on the upper image there first. And what we had presented before essentially was at the back of the roadway curb, we had our treeway, and then on the inside of the treeway there, we had our 5-foot sidewalk, and then we had either sort of stone walls and to help make up grade or planting and those sorts of things. And then, within there were certain access points. So now if we kind of look at the bottom plan now, starting over on the left-hand side, just to the left of 1200 is where our green is going to be. So that's sort of, if you kind of think of that as the first kind of moment along King Street. And we do have some images that kind of quickly show some high-level ideas there to sort of tie this all together. And then as you sort of walk east on King Street, I think it's east, let's call it plan right, coming down and towards the corner of 1200 is where we hit our first kind of little node there. And what we're trying to do essentially along the length of King Street is not sort of focus on one point. We're trying to sort of create moments where we can through the length. Some of them are bigger, like the green, and some of them are sort of smaller, like little micro nodes of benches, and others are kind of intermediate, where we were able to kind of wrap the building, where we can introduce entrances, sort of at that left lower corner of 1400 and the left lower corner of 1500, where we have nice little cafe zones. And then, of course, we have our little Vest Pocket Park between 1400 and 1500, which, is a nice sort of bookend for what the green is going to be offering along King Street. So again, if we kind of like walk down, we get to that corner of 1400, and you can see that's our first little node there that we're creating. And that parking space, we took 2 parking spaces off out of the parking count there, which was a tough pill to swallow, but we thought it was worthwhile to try to create a little node, again, along King Street there. And again, we do have some imagery that'll help hopefully clarify what that'll start to look like. And then wrapping that corner of 1400, we added a little cafe seating right at the back of sidewalk there. And then as we continue east, you can see that we have 3 little like micro or mini seat nooks there. And those are essentially going to be benches, sculptural benches. We're going to think of them as kind of being a couple feet off of the back of sidewalk so that if you're sitting there, and people are walking, you'll still feel comfortable. And then also, when people aren't sitting there, there are going to be benches that still have substance to them. In other words, right now we're thinking that some of them will have backs to them, some of them will be backless. They might vary in terms of depth. There'll be potentially wood material for seating surface, so they'll be comfortable. Of course, with a metal frame to hold them up. And they'll be sculptural to look at and kind of pique your interest. They'll have some substance along that stretch of the roadway, so they don't just kind of disappear, and you know that they're there. And then also, if we continue down, you'll see that we added some bike parking along that back of sidewalk there. And then we get finally to the 1400, 1500, where we have our little Vest Pocket Park. And if you kind of look up and then look down, you'll see we really sort of expanded that in its presence and really sort of rethought, where it was focused on. We really tried to make that little park kind of two-sided. So it's really non-directional there. And then just to the east of that, we have another little entrance that we were able to get in there. It's a 1500, and we introduced another little cafe zone there. And then, of course, moving down towards the right side of 1500 along King Street, we have another little nook in there with some more seating. You know, and again, what we've tried to do was kind of spread it out where it made sense, where we could in terms of grading. So that way there, if you were, you know, getting a coffee, you didn't really have to go too far to find a place to sit, depending on what scale and what type of intimacy you wanted to hang out in. And so from here, we'll relate it a little bit to the form-based code that was developed. We've got we've got the front garden and the dining patio, and then, of course, our little pocket park, which was not in the form-based code, but I think it's worth mentioning because it is sort of, it's a little different space there, but it is a nice public programmable space that's going to be along that back of sidewalk of King Street. And, you know, again, you can see it's sort of stretched along through the whole length there. And then we're going to go through a couple of images, kind of relating it back to the form-based code. And then after this, we'll have a quick walkthrough down King Street so we get an idea and a sense of what it's going to look like. So here we're looking at the front garden and requirements there, 80% planted area, minimum 4-foot wide walkway. And so here we're looking at, you know, we have our nice little garden planting, could be perennials, little woody plants, annuals, and then sort of a hint of what that mini little seat nook will start to look like, and our initial ideas of the type of seating we want to see out there. You know, again, those seats aren't going to be, you know, short. We envision them being 2 benches put together, could be up to 14 feet of length of sitting area. And then we're looking at the dining patio. This one in particular is at the corner of 1500. And again, this is, I think the code called for a minimum of 6-foot width for movable tables and chairs. We're achieving that here, plus a minimum of a 4-foot walk to get in that door and kind of get by there. These will be movable, so you'll be able to kind of make your own space depending on how many people are in your group, where you want to, you know, if you want to kind of just sit on your own and scroll through, you know, Instagram, you're able to do that here. There'll also be a buffer somewhat between that back of curb and the dining patio, and that's going to help do 2 things. One is it's going to help us take up grade, because in these areas we do have some grading issues we need to be concerned about. And then also it's going to give just a little bit of a buffer without disconnecting that space. So it'll still feel comfortable to be in, but you'll still feel like you're on King Street and part of all the kind of people watching, car watching action along there. And of course our little pocket park. So this is looking straight on, and it's just to kind of give a sense of how we're starting to envision that edge along King Street. So this is going to be a programmable space on the interior of that, but right on King Street, we're going to have fixed seating elements. Right now, we're thinking that they're multi-tiered to add to, you know, the whole idea of trying to create, you know, multi-uses, multi-type people being able to go out and use it. And also, you know, the bench that's parallel to King Street is non-directional. In other words, seating on all sides, you can sit on the upper tier on all sides. So it's not focusing on King Street, it's not focusing on the inside, on the pocket park side, but it's, you know, you can sit anywhere in there. And it's set back a little bit as a little foyer space, so that way it's comfortable to sit there and hang out. And then on the inside of that, you know, it's more programmable, where we'll have movable cafe tables and chairs. There could be, you know, little pop-up events, maybe a busker is there and you sit on the multi-tiered timber benches that we're going to have out there. Or it could be a sort of pop-up shop event that happens out there. Now we're going to walk down King Street so you get a full sense of that length and how we're trying to activate that space. And so here's that sneak peek of the green, and that's really going to have a strong presence on King Street. It's, you know, we've sort of rethought it a little bit in terms of this front space that we're looking at sort of being that intermediate zone, that welcoming zone. And we're dealing with grading here quite a bit. So we've thought it through where, we're gonna have some monumental stairs along that edge, sort of being really welcoming, bring you up into this intermediate level, start to bring you into the space, but still have it really feel connected as much as we can to King Street. And then, a couple more stairs up into that main green space there. So if we continue walking down, we're down at the corner of 1400, and you can see that little cafe zone that we've integrated into that spot where we've eliminated 2 spaces, which will also help with stacking of vehicles coming off of King Street. And then, of course, you'll get a sense of some of that planting zone in the garden spaces there as well. And then continuing on down, this is showing pretty much that stretch in front of 1400 and our little mini seat nodes that we have in there. And what those will start to look like, how they're really, they'll have some weight against the base of the building, so everything feels integrated and feels like a complete streetscape along that edge. And then finally kind of coming down here to our little pocket park and our little cafe zone at the corner of 1500. And you can start to kind of peek in to that pocket park and what that back side is going to look like and how those fixed benches can really kind of start to animate that edge and help kind of make an inviting entrance into the project here. I think that's it for me for the public realm. Move off to Jim.
Jeremy. Good evening to the board and to the community. My name is Jeremy Grossman. I'm president of Grossman Development Group based in Framingham, Mass. And I am, in a minute, going to address a couple of the comments and questions that were sparked in a couple of the last meetings. Before I do so, I just want to quickly introduce our company. Our firm and principals have owned, operated, and advised on retail properties throughout New England for over 30 years. We have a strong and long track record of creating successful retail environments for both communities and tenants. Our advisory work spans from master planning and merchandising to leasing and development for projects ranging from urban mixed-use developments to smaller scale suburban centers, similar in scale and scope to King Street. Our firm specializes in curating a retail tenant mix that delivers desired shopping and dining prospects and options to the communities it serves. King Street is obviously a very important project to this community and to the Lipoli companies, and our role as a company is to ensure that the retail village is positioned for long-term success by delivering a retail experience that meets the consumer expectations and supports the needs and requirements of both the local and national tenants, both now as it's developed and into the future, so that it's a sustainable project. And as I mentioned, I've attended all of the planning board hearings and have listened to the comments from the board and from the community. And I just want to touch on a couple of them as I think it's important. The first is that King Street, and I almost wish we had the plan up again, but King Street, the retail village specifically, is absolutely not a mall. If you look at the size of King Street, the square footage that's approved, it's about a quarter, if not even a fifth of the size of most malls or the open air centers that have been previously mentioned, whether it be in Linfield or Dedham or Hingham. Those centers on average are about 600,000 feet. This is a little over 100,000 feet. It truly is an extension of the downtown. And as you can see from the design, it's walkable, it's intimate, it's approachable, much different than a large scale mall environment. Second point is our tenant mix will be anchored by local and regional retail and restaurants. In fact, our early leasing effort is focused on especially the restaurants, which we believe is the heartbeat of the project, but also boutique retail, both retail that might exist in other downtown environments throughout the area or New England, but also new to the market concepts curated by operators who potentially have a business plan, and that's very important. The local and regional will be supported by national tenants. And if you look at any project, whether it's large scale or small scale, having a national tenant presence is critical to the success of the project and especially of the local and regional retail. They really work together. Local retail has a certain pocket of consumer demand, but it's the national retail that broadens the trade area into the neighboring communities that ultimately, again, rises the tide of sales. Second point I want to speak to is the dual entries. We've talked a lot about the importance of activating King Street. And I think from the last set of images, you can see how we've progressed in that fashion. Traditional national retail, and again, there'll be a component of that, avoid dual entries. And there's a few primary reasons why. First is that they really do need to manage the customer flow. Customers have to come in and out of typically one storefront. There are various reasons as to why. We can get into them. Mainly, it can be summarized by operational efficiency. But what that means is they want to control the customer experience all the way through. They want to manage theft and other factors. One entrance allows them to do that. The other, and more relevant to really this site and any site, is the proximity to parking. Parking is everything to these retailers. The parking in this project is closest to the pedestrian walkways and zones, sitting on the opposite side of the storefronts, both surface lots and structured. It's critical that they front the parking. The last and really most critical for the national tenants specifically is they just simply don't do it. They don't have prototypes for it. It ends up impacting their interest on leasing, and therefore it's something that we struggle with. Now, the exception to that, and what you've seen in the images, and it's real, is restaurants and some of the boutique local retail. But restaurants actually work to have dual entrances because it typically caters to the patio spaces and the outdoor areas. And so we will move the restaurants through the project and up and down King Street, again, to maximize that activation. Next point, and really the critical point, we've taken a hard look at these plans, at the ways in which these buildings have been configured, the dimensions, the scale and size of the buildings. Bottom line is we believe it works. It works for the retail. It allows the retailers to operate efficiently. And as we think about this project today, where it's being developed today, but it's forever, it mitigates the long-term leasing risk. Over time, tenants will come and they'll go. Some tenants will get smaller, some tenants will get larger. These buildings, as designed, really maximize the leasing potential into the future. And so I'll leave it there.
All right. All right, I'm back and clean up here, everybody. We're almost done. Dave Snell from PCA, Master Plan Architects here. So I'm going to continue this and talk about, a lot of the changes that we made on the buildings along King Street. Again, we've heard a lot from the community. We've had a chance to meet with UTL. We've talked through the peer review with Jesse and gone through a lot of different thinking. And and I hope it comes across, we've worked really, really hard to manipulate these buildings where they hit King Street to accomplish many of the goals set out in the form-based code. So this is the before and this is the after. And I'm going to flip back and forth because what I think is important here is if you can try and sense the scale. So the building volumes are quite significantly smaller now. And that's accomplished through adherence to some of the primary mass dimensions that are in the form-based code. So what you see here is a bit of a diagram of this proposed change here. So what we've taken is that all the facades that face King Street are held within the limits of the form-based code's dimensions. And so by doing that, the roof lines have now come down, the volume reduces. And, also in our back and forth with UTL, the idea of bringing in, some more of the primary masses helps to vary the buildings. So they are not all the same building. Each one is unique and different. So what we think we've accomplished here is really brought the scale and volume down, increased the variety, and addressed much of what we heard about the scale and presence. This diagram just points out that actually in some points, of each one of these buildings, the ridge height, the top of the roof is dropped by 10 feet, which is substantial. Also, Chairman Yates, I know we talked about the eave height. We've dropped that from 22 down to 20. As we've done this proportional study to maintain how the buildings feel and making sure the roof lines don't feel too heavy. So that ridge line reduction, really helps quite a lot. And we've increased the fenestration percentage along King Street in every building. We've added entries as discussed. Every building has an entry. The one on the corner of 1200 is right close to King Street, but we're dealing with some very severe grades there, so just want to acknowledge that, but we have put that there. And all the windows will have clear glass and not frosted.
So before you move on, can I ask a question about that particular slide? So
Yes.
the only place where there are actual physical doors that humans can go through are the orange ones. All the yellow ones are just fake windows or windows.
So those are where those doors are, and those are the 3 locations, 1 per building that follow those nodes on the street. And that's where we intend to have restaurants and wraparound uses, and feel confident in those locations, being able to do that based on what we've been able to go through with Jeremy and his team. And again, this is something that through leasing we would continue to push, but this is what we're feeling comfortable committing to. And then we'll show you what those the windows are expected to look like too. So this is just a before and after to show each building quickly. So this is the before and the after. And I think, again, going back and forth, you really get a sense that the scale is quite a bit smaller. These smaller component parts, more in keeping with Littleton, the Common, and the neighborhood here. So this is 1200. These different changes here, smaller dormer elements, smaller individual component parts. Also, stone bases throughout here, which is another thing that we came out of the conversations with UTL. Each building has a different body material, so they're all light tone, but this one is brick, this one is clapboard, the last one is shingle. So this is the before and after on this one. So quite a bit of manipulation here on this building, 1400 here. This is one of those entry corners. This is the other side. And then 1500 before and after. This one has quite a bit of change. So, and this is the other side. Let's go back and forth. Yeah, so, Joe sneak peeked a lot of these renderings, but just these, we've zoomed out in all of these so you can get the full picture. His were, focused in a little bit more on the closer moments. But again, just want to reiterate that this is not turning its back on King Street. This is engaged and active part of King Street. And also this entire project is welcoming the residents of Littleton in at many points. So the site is extremely porous, and at each location where we draw you in, there are moments of activity, there are places that you can go, there are places that you can sit, there's entries at these points. And all the spaces in between, we've worked to bring activation and amenities, throughout. And as we said before, the green is a huge asset. This is a transformative element on King Street. It's going to change the character. It's going to really be a new community hub for everyone in Littleton to enjoy. And while we're not here specifically talking about that, it's hard to ignore the fact that it is an integral part of this. This master plan and what we've all been working towards for many, many years is something dramatic and hugely useful for the town as a whole. And we think it's really powerful. And so as we walk down King Street, this, as we go a little bit further and, we see the combinations of these different front gardens and dining patios, entries. And what you see in some of the windows here is that, every window now we've integrated additional depth for display and activation through art or any of these components. So there's always something going on with light and activity through the whole street. This is pulled out at the corner of 1400. Pocket Park. But I think, again, it's important to also see in many of these is, you know, the scale transition that occurs. Like all of these buildings have their own individual character. They have their own massing, and they transition the scale well at this edge up into the back of the site. So it's you know, we think that these changes we're quite happy with them, and you know, glad to be able to work through this with all of you. We're really proud of where it's gotten to, and hope that you agree that this is a significant improvement. This is just looking from across the street back through the Pocket Park. I think it's important to note here, you know, 1300 in the back is heavily obscured. It is really difficult to see. If you're actually on the street, you really can't see it. And so we did focus a ton of effort on getting King Street right. This is a view I don't think came up. This is the end of 1500. You see another one of our patio spaces here. And again, a good throat coming into the entry point of the site. Another thing that came up through the peer review, flush sidewalks at all these entry points. So you see we've elevated all of those. That was a design change that also occurred. So at each one of those entry points, we've elevated those sidewalks as well. And then just, you know, as a reminder, you know, these have been updated with the new buildings for the pedestrian way. And again, we think that this project has so much to give Littleton. A killer King Street, an incredible pedestrian way, a town green, a ton of amazing restaurants and retailers going to come here. And we think that this is going to be a really exciting place. So just want to leave you with a couple of these views. And that is it from us. So I'm going to give it to Morgan to have
Thanks.
Do you have a question?
Yes.
Could you go to the post of your rendered walkthrough? Rendering.
That's fine.
Yeah. So like, I think you're planning like trying to maybe think about restaurants, coffee shops on the corners there where the entries were. Whose space is the seating outside, right? So one of those is a restaurant. That if it's a restaurant, it wants the seating for them, not for people just walking by, versus a coffee shop outside. You know, what's the ownership concept of the table space outside? And then where's the restaurants have patio space?
So, you know, Jeremy, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Yeah.
About what they would expect, but that's usually something that gets negotiated.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're presenting this is all public space right now.
So actually,
Or that's what I'm trying to understand. Which part is
yeah.
going to be sort of like
All of those benches, 100% public and all that. I think the thing in question is the cafe tables and in the dining patios. And I would say that those are likely to be controlled by the restaurants. But
yeah, all of the patio seating that's tight to each of the restaurant spaces will be dedicated to the restaurants. They'll be maintained by the
But how does
restaurants.
that overlay with the pictures that you showed us?
Yeah, so I could point
I
to
just want to make sure I understand which
Yep.
is likely to be private patio
So-
space versus public.
right. So
patio
this space here with the orange seating is likely to be activated by the adjacent restaurant. So this, if
So
you can
if
see
you
my
go
map.
to,
So, and then if we keep going, the Pocket Park, right? So there's a handful of orange, I think it's, you know, these orange seats would like
yeah, so
be
if you go
restaurants.
to
So,
the one that says illustrative site plan phase 1, which has got all your orange and your things there.
yep,
It'd be
yeah.
nice if that was overlaid in terms of which ones are public versus reserved. So,
Yeah.
because I can't get a feel from that by trying to match what you just said to.
Yeah, I can,
This other
I
diagram
can
that
actually
we
show you
just
quickly.
looked
If it, in order to just clarify, so I'm gonna go here. So I'm gonna zoom in building per building. So this area, right, this restaurant, depending on how we lease it, whether it's 1 or 2 or 3, right, there are a couple of opportunities. There's some, you know, opportunity to activate up here against the pedestrian way. But there's a ton of space here, which we think they're going to want to activate against the green. So I would say And then the yellow, good point, everything up here in yellow would be public. This whole seating area on the corner, public. This side of it, I think is probably TBD, but these seats would definitely be. And they can kind of feel like that. They're really with the door there. And then all of these seats, public, 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 everything here public. This would be likely the restaurant seats, and then maybe there's some here that would be TBD. And then this is all public.
Because I think personally, I'd like to see the renderings and everything updated with the distinct. Gotta be sensitive to people that maybe have color blindness pieces there, more color coded as to which parts are we going to see as the public versus parts of the retail settings there, so that we don't set a false expectation from our community that you can just grab any table that was on this plan when you're walking down the street, because I don't think that that's going to be necessarily the case. I can't tell.
Yeah, and I don't know that we can.
We could do that, but I think if you, is there an overall that we could do it too? I think if you look at sort of percentage of pedestrian realm spaces, the spaces that aren't public, I don't like to use the word public, the ones that aren't managed by a tenant, I think you'll see that percentage is pretty small. I mean, you're talking about sort of the corner of 1,500, corner of 1,400. And I think maybe that edge there that we've created out of 2 parking spaces, again, that's a tough one, but I think that that could go either way. And then and that I think is it. And then we've got the entire green space and that entire spine in the back, which I know is on King Street, but if we just focus on King Street, I think that you're going to find.
I'm not opposed to what you presented here or anything. I just want clarification as to so people don't have a wrong expectation if they grab an ice cream from some other place and they're walking down King Street.
And I think you're right.
They're not landing in some restaurant table space.
Typically, what I've experienced in destinations like this is full formal sit-down restaurants, dinner places, things like that. Their seating is usually very clearly theirs. Fast casual restaurants, coffee shops, cafes is typically much more casual. And so you can grab a coffee from one place and sit at another. That's been my experience in these places. And they might be managed by that group, but it's not like a you can't sit here thing, because none of those tables are usually you go to the host and you go and sit down. All this is leasing dependent, but if there's a desire to
again, it's mainly in terms of knowing what the expectations are, right? I've gone to a lot of places where you grab a coffee and you walk down the street and there's tables there, but those are actually reserved for the business that put those tables out there. They're not grab seats. So you get a coffee from one place and a Danish from another place. You don't go to a third place and take their table. It's, again, just making sure we understand what for expectations.
Certainly. Did you want to say closing remarks? Or
I mean, if you guys want to jump in, I mean, I have like a couple additional thoughts if I can, but that's all right. I appreciate your patience. I'm trying to keep this under an hour, but we may be failing. I have 30 seconds. I mean, there's a lot to absorb here, but I really hope that the board and the community has seen the effort that has been made by our team. Just as an aside, when Dave and his team brought these changes to us, I was trying to think of a non-architectural way to describe what he had done, and the only thing I could come up with was that he had injected the buildings with Ozempic. Because you just see how, like, just as a volume, they have shrunk. It's not just the height, but it's everything. And we really hope we were able to show that. It's not easy to show, but I think we did a good job of showing that. And I know that was in response to a lot of the feedback we received. And I can't stress enough, and these guys are too humble to focus on it, but how difficult that is. Each of these things are difficult decisions. I think at one meeting, board member Baker suggested removing parking spaces. We have done that. That's easy just to say in an environment like this, but it's excruciating, because those parking spaces are critical to Jeremy's job to try to find these retailers. And those surface spaces are the most precious. But we want to be responsive. We wanted to listen. We listened. I just cannot stress enough that a lot of these decisions that have made changes, they seem like they're easy, but they're not. So I just have to express my appreciation, my pride for our team for getting us here. We certainly know, we're here to listen more. I said we've listened, but we're still listening. So I do have the entire list of a lot of these changes. I wanted to run through them, but I will spare you for now. I guess we'll just bring it back to the board and certainly open up for questions and comments at this point.
One thing that you did submit was called Form 1H. We would need to identify clearly what waivers we would need for this is color coded. There's not a key on it, but that's all. We just need something that's clear
And maybe we can talk in specifics offline about how we can do that, but it is basically everything in color would need it, but
you have a green and a blue.
Oh.
So I don't know what.
Okay, I will clarify that for sure.
Yeah.
And the challenge is of course, that form was not really designed for a project like this, so we did our best to create something. So we can
something
clarify.
that we would want to nail down for the decision.
Fair enough.
I have to compliment you for all of your renderings. Yeah. I'm old school. I can't even imagine in the old days doing anything like that. Whatever people think of the content of them, the actual existence of them, my compliments. Okay, board.
Yes, so you can see the effort. I would say, however, that it is still not the intention of form-based code as it was written by UTIL and as voted upon by this town. It looks to me like we're trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, and you are trying different Band-Aid approaches, and it's just not working. It's not what we envisioned. And if you have any doubt about what was envisioned, I would hope that your time with Jesse has helped with that. One of the things that really has concerned me when I saw the layout of the fire trucks that are supposed to be able to come in case of emergency is Building 1300 is a residential building, and from what you showed us tonight, specifically on slide 44, with everything along your proposed pedestrian walkway, if it's supposed to be that nice, there is no way that a fire truck can get through there. So if a fire truck can't get through there, how are people and property going to be saved by our fire department? So that goes back to my point about how this isn't following form-based code. If form-based code was actually followed, then the buildings would have all the entries on the front and the back side of it would be parking. That entire parking structure that you have would just be parking for everything up front, because that's the way it was intended. And one of the things that is so frustrating to me, and this is the second time that this has happened, where a developer comes in to our town, we have a bylaw in place, and the developer comes in and basically says, we're not gonna really follow that because it doesn't fit our needs. Well, you know what? We have a bylaw for a reason. Our town spent 18 months working on that bylaw to try to figure out what we wanted. And we came up with that bylaw, we voted on that bylaw, and then we also have it in our decision of the master plan that waivers weren't going to be allowed from that decision. So we have two things. We have our master plan decision that specifically says under condition number 5 that we should have no waivers, and we have our form-based code bylaw. And you all are coming in and basically saying, you know what? This is what we believe we need to do. I've heard you too. I've heard you say that we've heard from retailers and this is what's going to be bringing in money for the retailers. But it doesn't work for the town.
Anna, I have to stop you.
I'm done.
Okay, you're done. When we originally designed form-based coding, It was not for that property, it was for the
Yes, it
common.
was.
No, it wasn't, it was
Yes,
for
it
the
was.
common.
Yes, it was.
Common, the
Nope, you're
average-
wrong, Mark.
The average distance in the common properties are 120 feet wide.
You're
That's
wrong.
it. No, I'm not.
Yes, you
Look
are.
where they're approved, look where that was where it was originally done. We didn't even know this was gonna be form-based coding.
This is what was approved at town meeting on June 13th, 2020, and if you look at this map, Mark, right there, that line is exactly what space we're talking about on King Street.
This is twice the size of that.
It doesn't matter.
It does
This is what
matter.
we approved.
Stop.
It does
Stop.
matter. You can't put a couple hundred square feet of form-based and not have
Anna,
to.
you
act-
said you were done, Mark. Please finish your comments.
I'm
We'll
just
get
trying to
other
say that
comments.
we saw this over 2 years ago, access on both sides of the road. They've done everything they can to try to incorporate King Street. They can't have parking there. They make it looks great. It's walkable. That's what we've all wanted. This is way bigger than form-based code was ever designed to be. There is no way you can have one-sided buildings on that. Absolutely impossible. It's gotta be
Then
walkable
maybe
in
you
the
should
middle.
have said something in 2020.
We never thought something this big was gonna come along in 2020.
Mark,
No,
this is
Well,
exactly
you
the space.
two,
It's 100
please,
feet wide.
you've both
It's
made your
100 feet
points.
wide. This is 250 feet wide. It has to be bigger.
Okay.
And it has to be accessed from both sides.
I-
Anybody who looks at this sees that you have to be able to access it from both sides. That's
I-
it.
voted for form-based code. I was on the planning board at that time. It didn't even occur to me, Anna, that we would apply this to a parking lot, a giant 2,000 car parking lot. I live in the common. I was extremely excited about it because it really spoke to infill, to texture, to relaxing some things, intensifying other things. So I don't understand. You would want a giant parking lot back there?
So
You would want a
that's-
giant parking lot back there and people
No,
walk along
but
King
that's
Street?
all part of what
But-
Mr. Yang presented to us last time as to how they could do this differently, and they haven't done that. They haven't even addressed building 1300.
Well, that's
And
true.
I am concerned about it from a fire perspective.
Well, that is something that you all should know, is that the fire department has come back and said, so that's something that's gonna be worked through.
We're meeting with them on Monday.
Yeah,
We've already had
and
conversations.
my first reaction is, but fire safety is important, and it's a very deep building, so people in the audience should know that the fire department would like to have access down the pedestrian walkway.
Yep.
And so that's gonna have to be a landscape and material issue, and things will be changed.
Mr. Chair, my point is, if they just did form-based code the way it was intended, that wouldn't be an issue.
It wouldn't work. Absolutely wouldn't work. Form-based coding would work in building 12, 14, and 15. It never took into account 13 and 11. It was never that wide. That's the difference. We're dealing with a site plan that's twice as big as what form-based code was designed for. We never saw a building
I
when
would like to hear what Mr. Yang has to say about that, since he's the one who designed it.
It was never designed for 250 feet. It was designed for 100 feet. Everything we saw, all the renditions, everything showed small little buildings on 100-foot lots. That's it. We never saw this site. This site was never proposed at 250 feet.
My other perspective on being, I came in at the end of the formulation of the code, but including this part of it was a very last minute decision. Including the part of it along King Street was not in the original overlay. And at the very last minute, it was included, and it anticipated to do that, anticipated that, we might have something going, something different going along there. But
It is in our bylaw, and that line goes all the way up.
I agree with you,
Thank you.
but planning and development, well, I don't wanna go further. You've made your point. Daryl.
Oh. I like the changes that they've presented, and I'm trying to go through the history here to find where I was looking for, but at what date did we give them approval of their it had a rendering.
2024, I think.
Right, I'm trying to make sure I have that right. So there's
The first approval was 2022.
2022, we saw the fly-through, it showed the common.
And then we have what date did we give them a definitive plan? That was, I saw in 24, we have a concurrence for a master plan layout. So
I believe it's 23.
I'm just trying to find it. I wanted to just see in the record
Is that right?
what we approved.
Definitive subdivision.
Yeah.
So the baseline I view we're working off is what we approved. And if we didn't approve it, then a lot of the arguments become, in my mind, more valid. But we approved a plan, and this is enhancements to that plan. I don't think we can
further development of that.
Right, but we can't hold them to something that was not what we already approved.
If you scroll to, if I may, scroll to the renderings, they have a date of December 27th, 2023, but it's listed under March.
All I know is they came through with a fly-through that shows this, with the common areas butting up to each other.
That fly-through
in the
was
middle.
this last summer.
And it was exciting. It was an exciting
But anyway.
addition to
Right
this
here.
project.
See how it's
Still.
activated? And there are cars down here. They fully intended to activate King Street when we approved that plan.
But the state came in and said they can't activate King Street, okay? They
Right,
already
at the
came
beginning
in.
of this conversation, Mr. Yates said that we were going to take a look at that. So my point is that when we approved this plan, it was activated on King Street. There were people coming out of doors. If you look at those renderings.
They're not now because you can't park
Right,
there.
so that
it's-
was the bait and switch that the resident talked about that last
It wasn't a
time.
bait and switch.
I please,
So anyway,
Daryl, do you finish your comments?
I like the revisions that you've done here. I looked at the various review comments there. Look like the stormwater ones are just procedural that you're going to do. There's still clearly a disagreement on some of the traffic mitigation pieces there. And then the latest thing about the fire access needs to obviously be addressed there. I am personally not concerned about building 1300's overall size because you can't see it from the front. It's fully in back of it. It's going to be similar to, the fact that the residential units that you're going to eventually build are larger than some of the ones that we have, but based on where they're positioned, the mass of them is not as visible or noticeable. I don't concur with the reviewer's comment about reducing the amount of parking because if you don't have parking, people can't go there. So I appreciate the balance that you have to maintain between trying to maintain a local character of the development, but the needs of the retail. I've been to, you can see that stores that have entrances on both sides, they usually try to block one off with a long hallway so you can't use it there because of the issues of that. All the parking in the back, access to the front, well, we could use this building. This building doesn't activate the main street. We all came in the basement entrance. So I think we have to be realistic about how people actually use buildings and want to access buildings there. So I'm, I like what I've been seeing here. I like the reduced scales, and again, I think one of the reviewer comments was against it, but I like that berm, a green berm between the road and the sidewalk there with the trees in order to isolate yourself from all of that traffic that's on King Street. The renderings that you have don't show, 500 cars an hour or 600 cars an hour going past there, which is what, we have on King Street, there. So I guess that's sort of the gist of my comments.
Bartlett.
Well, I think this presentation is a whole lot better than the last one. I appreciate the work that you've done. The renderings, the perspectives were great for understanding it. I would very much like to see more activation on King Street. I think you need more entrances. I think that the corner one that you have on 15 really belongs on 12 near the open space. I think there's some tweaks. It looks like the buildings have moved up from the street 10 feet, so that you have a wider space between the sidewalk and the buildings.
We've reconfigured the massing, so in some places they got further away.
But I'm really glad to see that there's more space there, and I'd like to see more doors and more utilization of that space. I think that there are people walking along, but I think it's important to be able to go in a door and get a cup of coffee or an ice cream cone and keep going. So that's really my comment. I think that the form-based code strictly interpreted doesn't work, and it's not appropriate for this site just because of the scale of it. I think that you guys have done pretty well making what you want to do fit as closely as you have. And I think it looks like to me like what you have proposed will work. But I would like some more doors on King Street.
Thank you, Carla. Mark, I'm going to assume you've said your piece.
I said my piece.
Okay. This is a great presentation. You did respond. I do, however, when I look at this versus the renderings, I just have a little bit of a disconnect between these little sidewalks, these little tiny sidewalks going in random places. In the renderings of the actual renderings, it looks much more convincing. So I guess my point would be to make this plan look more convincing than, as convincing as the renderings are. And we talked about, that being said, let's extend the conversation to because we're going to work toward a decision. We still have a big part of the puzzle about the housing component. And we have been told that 410 is going to satisfy our affordable housing agreement or obligation. What remains is the issue of how we can come to, and you're going to have to propose something to us, but our concern is that since this is a multi-phase project, if it's interrupted in any phase and we have pushed the affordable housing toward a later phase that will not be done, we're stuck with no affordable housing, which is one of the primary goals of this whole project. So we need a mechanism by which we can claw back apartments for affordables if it doesn't go through, if we haven't seen what's going on at 410 yet. But as much as the retail has taken all of our attention, the main part of this project is housing. And we want to look at everything we can do to get the housing, to potentially make it some affordability a little bit more affordable than otherwise might be. So I don't want to leave this meeting without bringing it back toward that goal.
Okay, yes, appreciate that. Part of the submission, we included a letter from Henry Fontaine, the zoning enforcement officer.
I understand.
Okay, I just want to reference that.
I understand. However, if we don't wanna be, we have our town council here, we don't wanna be stuck with no affordable housing if for whatever reason, the project doesn't go forward. We've pushed it all to later phases, which we're told. We have that letter, it's unfortunate, but we have that letter. But we still need a mechanism by which we can be assured that we will get our inclusionary housing obligation taken care of.
Understood. No, I hear your concern. If I can, I guess there's just a couple thoughts. One is, before the board today is the 44 units. That's it. Obviously, we're coming
Right.
as a second application with larger amounts.
Won't have, if this is all you did on that site, we wouldn't get, like 10% of that.
And if I guess I put my legal hat on, I mean, it is in compliance with the bylaws of the town. And the part of the bylaws.
We'll get our legal hats on that, because I don't think it is.
Which is why we asked the zoning enforcement officer for an opinion.
I
and he
agree, but
granted it,
listen to me carefully. All I want is some mechanism for a clawback if things don't go forward. That I don't know. We need something, because this is as much as we love all these drawings and we like the idea of ice cream cones and cafes. The whole point of this project is housing.
Understood.
Okay?
Understood.
I don't know. I don't have a suggestion.
Yeah, I hear you.
mechanism,
So we're not gonna
just
solve it right now,
start
but
thinking
understood.
about it,
Understood.
because I don't think I want to go to a decision until we have some agreement or mechanism.
But shouldn't that be handled as we do the residential? It's really.
It's possible. It's possible.
We're in commercial.
Yeah, we have four, but it's I'm taking the opportunity here to emphasize that. So a couple things as we go forward, that you will, this fire truck thing is a big issue. And I don't expect us to have, we can't solve that today at this meeting, but you'll have to work on that. The second issue is, the way this is landscaped currently, I don't know if we could do parking along King Street. And it's possible when you look at it, maybe you do parking, in front of building 1500 or, I'm just acknowledging that there's issues here. But I think as much as you've worked on, you've worked on the King Street buildings, I do believe you've worked on the King Street sidewalk with the benches. I like the look of the benches you're, at least in the renderings. But there still isn't, that zone between the sidewalk and the buildings is still mysterious. And I don't think that it's, well, yeah, you show plants, but
We did submit a landscape plan,
pardon?
and the landscape plan which was submitted does have more detail on that.
When I say mysterious, I mean it doesn't go quite far enough in supporting the potential for entrances along in some of these other spaces. Or the potential for an additional restaurant that might have a completely private patio in the front. And then the other thing is, when you look at the typologies that the form-based code proposed, one of the things that isn't here or wasn't made use of, and I'm not saying that it had to be made use of, but is our covered areas. I don't know
Talking about the frontage types?
We do have.
Well, there's all kinds of different, and one of them was porches, and I
I didn't
realized
see any
that
of that.
that's maybe not the thing to do here, but.
I do, yeah, I mean, on King Street, it's for us, but I do want to point out. There's actually a covered porch in this area here of 1200, and then we have another one here on 1100, which you might be able to see in the last yeah, here. Which so we are bringing in that typology in certain places, and it's not along the street.
Could
Lord
you,
knows that, but
you're being invited to continue, you've accomplished a lot. You're being invited to, go a little more. And we can't design it for you. And we understand the retail, imperatives but whatever, I'm just putting that out there.
Well, let me ask you a question. Would you rather sit and have dinner with your wife and that space over there looking at other space across the way? Or would you rather look at traffic?
Oh, I'm there. I mean,
see, that's my point.
Yeah.
King Street does not offer anything as far as eating, stopping, having an ice cream, having a coffee, yes. But if you're having dinner, you're gonna be in that common area with people on one side, people on the other, which is most of the places that you go to that are like this, that's what you get. That's what they're trying to accomplish here. That's what the fly-through we saw 2 years ago showed us. That's what this is. It has
So
to change.
I go back to, I agree with you totally. But I go back to the fact that there's going to be 800 new families living on this parcel. And each one of them is going to have a way of using this site that may not, that we can't, maybe it's even if you just walk your dog.
That's fine, but not sit there with dedicated
Well,
space for a restaurant.
okay.
That's gonna be in between or off to the sides. Okay, coffee, yes. Sit there, read the paper, have an ice cream, yes. But as far as dedicated
Oh, Mark,
space.
no one reads a paper
Oh, that. Read the computer that has the paper. That's my point. This has.
Someone in the presentation mentioned, looking at Instagram, and I'm going, oh, is there gonna be Wi-Fi over the whole site? There hopefully will be. Anyway, so we have gone through the architectural portion of this, but we have peer reviewers here for the stormwater and the traffic that are waiting, and if we could hear from them.
Mr. Chair, could we also hear from Mr. Yang?
Oh, yes, of course.
So I'm thinking, I'm not sure who's got time constraints, so who needs to go first? Perhaps Corinne, if you're ready.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. My name is Corinne Tobias with Green, and I performed the traffic peer review, which was submitted to the consultant. They have prepared their initial responses. So hopefully everyone has had a chance to take a look at those. I've taken a quick look at those. I do have a very, very brief PowerPoint just to kind of go over the status of some of the outstanding comments. I do believe it was mentioned previously that there's still a decent amount of distance on a number of these comments. I'm not going to go over every single one of them, but just some of the more major ones. So with that, I'm sharing the screen. And can everyone see?
Yes, it's working.
Yep. All right, excellent. Again, just a quick introduction. My name is Corinne Tobias. I'm the peer review consultant for this project. So some of our original comments that I wanted to bring up with respect to how they're addressed and how they're still a little bit outstanding. The first comment we made was with respect to the study area. There's an intersection of King Street and Russell Street that appeared to meet the 5% increase in traffic threshold, but was not included in the study area. Now, the petitioner acknowledges that the threshold was met, but they did negotiate their study area with DOT. They also stated in their comment that the current build out is unlikely to actually increase traffic by that much on at that location for King Street and Russell Street, but that they are including a substantial traffic monitoring package that is required in the Section 61 finding. And so our recommendation for that location, just as we go forward, if the petitioner could provide the current expected volume of traffic at that location to show that they did not anticipate, meeting that 5% threshold with the current build-out plan. And then to potentially commit to monitoring at that location and including it in future if they do end up increasing traffic to that effect. Because it was mentioned by some of the residents as well with respect to the school at that location and the potential conflicts created between the users of that and the additional traffic to the site. So that is going to be our suggested response, but we can certainly discuss that in more depth after this meeting. The next is kind of a group of comments, if you will, regarding King Street and Great Road. So actually this is the King Street and Great Road intersection itself. We took a look at it in the MassDOT impact portal. It was flagged as a high crash location. And so we are requesting additional evaluation of the crash history at that site, including what we call crash diagrams, which basically show you where and how accidents happened in and around the intersection. So the petitioner did state in their response that this will be required as part of the MassDOT permit application, that they'll have to provide it at that time. And so, I guess I would just say that the fact that it's required later does not preclude them from providing it sooner under this process. And I would just suggest that, knowing that it's going to be required later, it would be great if we could see that information sooner and help this board make that any decisions regarding safety at that location. Another comment that was brought up in a couple of different places in a couple of different ways, but they all relate to the left turns in and out of Great Road. And the configuration of the driveways at that location and how the left turns out are proposed to be prohibited and how it will functionally operate. So with respect to kind of all of those comments and comments like that, the petitioner, has stated and it came up as well with the King Street on-street parking, that these are things that they've been negotiating with MassDOT as part of the NEPA process. And so, with that respect, kind of the town does not have a role to play. I think, the board spoke earlier about getting some designated people to start negotiating the town's desires and perspectives with respect to MassDOT for this project. I think that's a great idea, and I think in some ways the 25% access permit application process will provide some of the bandwidth and scope to do that if it extends past this particular process. We could utilize the access permit application in order to have these conversations as well. And a couple of the other comments that I wanted to bring up were extending the sidewalk on the north side of Great Road to the King Street intersection. And I wanted to bring this up because I also feel like in the beginning, with the presentation, it wasn't clear. I know, there's some concern about the crossing of the ramps, and I believe the petitioners said they'd send folks down to the King Street and Great Road intersection to cross at that location instead. However, right now there's kind of a gap in the sidewalk network between essentially in front of where the gas station is today. And understanding that is private property and the petitioner does not own that property, I just would question, it's currently being developed on all sides of the property, so presumably there have been some discussions with the property owner, and whether or not that is something that they would consider negotiating to include a sidewalk to just finalize that connection so that you have one continuous route all the way along Great Road to the King Street intersection. Then one other comment we made was regarding extending the width of the sidewalk on the south side of Great Road, which is where the current sidewalk is located. Right now it's a proposed 5-foot sidewalk. There is no grass berm separating it. It's a pretty key pedestrian route. And it feels rather narrow and a little bit cramped, especially as you go over the bridge. And I'll be honest, the comment response to that was a little bit open-ended. That MassDOT has agreed to the footwidth during the NEPA process, but there may be some room for negotiation during the design. So I guess I would just say let's keep pushing for that, and either the extended width of the sidewalk or some form of grass buffer or something just to make it a more comfortable pedestrian experience. And then finally, the King Street on-street parking, which I think has already been discussed pretty heavily at this location. We understand that MassDOT has rejected it, but there may be additional ways forward for the town. I'll say the rest of the comments I think can either be addressed or have been, satisfactorily answered. So we'll provide our written responses to those. But I just kind of wanted to give the board a little bit of a heads up with respect to, I think a lot of these comments, the responses were that these were things that were negotiated with MassDOT, and so therefore there's nothing we can do at this time. But I think that that's not necessarily the case in all of these situations. And with respect to the request for additional information, that's certainly not, there's nothing in the MassDOT process that, again, prohibits us from requesting additional information. So again, this next step, this is just our suggestions of what we'll write with respect to our responses to these comments. I think I kind of already discussed most of these in depth, but here it is for the record, and if you have any questions about any particular issues, I'd be happy to just talk to them, speak to them a little bit more in depth. In addition to that, I did want to mention the safety improvements for pedestrians at King Street Common that was brought up in the hearing earlier. It did not make our initial letter because the hearing happened after that date, but we would also recommend including any of the improvements that kind of came out of that discussion as well. And finally, I just kind of did want to bring up one thing from section 61 of NEPA. Many of these comments were made in the FEIR, by the planning board on the public record, and MassDOT did acknowledge those comments, and they did acknowledge and suggest working with the town planning board to include some of these suggestions regarding the site access and the pedestrian and bicycle accommodations. So I just want to kind of point out that although section 61 finding was made, they acknowledge that this is the process for the town to consider their interests.
Thank you. I want to clarify something, Morgan. You had told us that despite this is a small portion of the overall project, that you were going to do all the traffic mitigation work as part of this. So I don't, do they know that, or is that one of your responses, or? I mean, I see this 25% thing and I don't know what that means.
That's the design level of
Okay.
all
Oh, yeah,
of
yeah.
it, 25% of 100% of it.
Yeah,
Yep.
the 25% is the initial submission to
Got
DOT. DOT has several steps along the way for their design review.
So
first
the
submission's
next
25%.
thing that I think you could clarify with the consultant is on the Great Road sidewalk, the existing sidewalk, which is adjacent to 410, that there is a development planned by this applicant at that site, which has the potential to change the sidewalk configuration, which would make it more attractive to use. We haven't seen that yet, but that's in the works.
Right, that's helpful to hear.
Okay, does board have any other questions, comments?
I have a clarifying question. Our representative from Green, I'm sorry, I can't read your name.
Corinne Tobias.
Hi, Corinne. So you had mentioned the fear. So the traffic report that you peer reviewed, is it the one from the fear, or was it a separate traffic report?
So, we looked at a number of different documents. The full traffic study was actually performed under the DEIR, which was like chapter 7. And then the FEIR had an updated traffic section, but it wasn't a full traffic study. And looked at that as well, and then we also looked at what came before the board with this application.
Okay, thank you, Corinne. I appreciate that because I know that some residents have wondered what specific traffic report to look at because there isn't anything on the project page that actually says a traffic report. So the fear and the deer. Okay, thank you.
Harold, do you have any comments?
No, it's gonna cycle back to the request for on-street parking. I think we need the request from the select board. What kind of timeline are we talking about for even making a request and then anticipated response from Mass DOT for this concept that this town would take over the road? Is this a 1-month process? Is it a 2-year process? Is it a 10-year process? Because without that information, I don't think we can make any judgments about what we ought to be requiring about local traffic mitigation concerns.
My impression that it would be several years process.
Bartlett?
No, I'm good.
Okay, Mark?
Good.
Okay, thank you, Corinne. We're very interested in establishing and going forward with some town, with a town component to working with these mitigation measures with the, Lapoli and DOT. So, thank you for pointing out that it was part of the MIPA comment. Okay, next. Stormwater.
Hi, I'm Jordan Green, and I'm a stormwater reviewer here. So to give you an update on the stormwater review, we've done an initial review. We've met with the applicant and gone over some of our comments. And we have reviewed the comments that they submitted. But we're still going through the comments to confirm everything has been addressed. But just to kind of give you a summary of the comments, their findings, and just reviewing their responses. Most of our comments were related to, you know, inconsistencies between the plans, details, or between the watershed plans and the HydroCAD model, or plan clarity comments. And it looks like a lot of those have been addressed, just based off of our initial review and their responses to comments, which is great. Some of our, you know, bigger comments were, you know, we noticed that some of the peak rates under post-construction exceeded pre-construction. It looks like they've revised their plans or model to address that. So now all the post-construction peak rates are mitigated and are less than pre-construction, which is good. We questioned some of the watershed boundaries for the watershed plans, and it looks like they've gone through and updated them. We're still in the process of back checking them to make sure we agree with all the boundaries. We also had some back and forth with the applicant on the drainage configuration and pretreatment. So the initial plan that was sent had many catch basin and catch basin connections, and so those catch basins also didn't have sumps. So we expressed our concern for, you know, having them online and not having sumps, and you know, any kind of sediment debris that would enter them would you know, start you know, entering the pipe and, you know, losing capacity. So the applicant has made the effort to make a lot of those catch basins offline, which is great, and make sure that all the catch basins do have deep sumps, so that any sediment or debris is, you know, captured and stored in the sump and not you know, potentially clogging the drain line. So, you know, we saw that they need improvements to that. You know, we're still fully reviewing the updated plan since the changes were fairly, there was, you know, a fairly decent amount of changes to the drainage layout. In terms of pre-treatment, you know, we had some discussions about pre-treatment. So basically the large drainage system that goes through this phase 1 area discharges to a subsurface infiltration system. And you know, the initial goal of the applicant was to basically only pre-treat the parking area. But due to the large size of the pedestrian area and impervious surfaces and, you know, high traffic that we're expecting of pedestrians, you know, we recommended some additional pre-treatment. So they it looks like they agreed, and, you know, they've revised their design so that you know, there's some additional pre-treatment of the pedestrian areas as well, to help pre-treat before discharging to the subsurface system for full treatment, which is great. Another comment we had was of the subsurface system, it is on you know, a sloped area, and we were concerned about potential breakout in that slope area because of the steepness of the slope. And it looks like they've updated their plans to flatten that slope to be within the parameters of the Massachusetts Stormwater Handbook, which is good. You know, we also reviewed the O&M plan, and, you know, some of the BMPs are missing from the O&M plan, but it looks like they've been added now. So we're in the process of reviewing that, making sure that you know, we agree with their updated O&M plan as well. So you know, overall, it looks like the applicant intended to address all of our comments. Which is good. We're just in the process of confirming that everything's been addressed. So that is our update for stormwater.
Thank you. Any more questions?
I have 2 questions.
Sure.
So, Jim, I just wanted to ask, the stormwater review that you did, is it for the entirety of the project, or was it just for the select piece that we're discussing tonight on retail?
Yeah, that's a great question, and that is something that I did coordinate with the applicant as well, because, it wasn't 100% clear. So I did look at the whole site, initially, and they did model the whole site, but how it works is they mainly focus on the retail site, and they modeled that, but they tied it into the full site. The full site has hypothetical stormwater BMPs that tie into the full system. So I reviewed them on a hypothetical sense, meaning the applicant, when they develop those other areas, they need to meet what they're presenting right now or better in terms of stormwater mitigation in those other areas. So I guess my answer is yes, I focused on the retail site, but I also looked at the whole site as a whole.
Okay, thank you. Reason why I ask is because on page 1 of their stormwater report, it says that there are 67 hotel rooms. Now, mind you, we haven't even really approved that part of the project, but I've seen various numbers ranging from 67 to 150. So if it changes and they come back and they say, oh yeah, we want 150, how does that change this evaluation?
So in terms of our review, we were reviewing based off of the plans that they had and their assumptions for impervious area. So if that impervious area changes, then they would have to provide. So, in terms of the retail space, I think they have, what they have now, so that can be, easily reviewed based on, what they have. But those other areas that are undeveloped, they've assumed an impervious surface. So again, like I was saying, if that impervious surface increases because they change what they're thinking now, then they'd have to provide more stormwater mitigation on site, because the peak flows leaving those areas need to meet what they have right now or better.
Thank you.
So each of those will have to be reviewed individually as they move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, does that make sense?
Yes, it does. And so, Mr. Chair, I would just ask that we set that as a potential condition then, that moving forward with the project, that if, as he said, the impervious changes, that then they have to have that mitigated and reviewed.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Bartlett? Okay. Thank you, Jim. I guess there's just a timing question. So you haven't finished the response to their response. When do you anticipate having that done?
I plan to finish it up next week.
Okay.
We just couldn't turn around this week because we got the responses last Friday, and material is still coming in until Tuesday. So
no, that's fine. And if we could get it, into our system as soon as possible, so that we can have it to inform our decision, as we go forward. That's great.
Chair?
Yes.
One thing I would ask on this peer review and others is if we could have a focus part of the report that says the unresolved issues between the applicant and the peer review. I appreciate the in-depth comments on all the other ones, but if it's resolved, it's not something that really needs to be brought up to our level here. But if there's a disconnect or unresolved issue, those are the ones that I think as a board we need to focus on.
Well, in the past, we've gotten color-coded.
Right, and that's the process that he's doing now.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that.
Yeah, but I mean, I read all the stormwater ones, and it basically said they're gonna do them all, so it's like,
Bunch of verbiage.
I didn't really need to if they're gonna do them.
No, they usually, it usually comes down to.
I know, but even on the summary presentations, if they could focus on what's unresolved
Okay.
versus what they've already come to agreement with everybody, it will just make it a little easier for us to focus on the parts that we need to pay more attention to.
And that may, if you don't come to, an agreement, that may happen at the next
Right.
go round. Okay, thank you. Next, Jesse. Thank you for being patient.
Hi all. Good evening. I wasn't sure if I was supposed to chime in earlier when there was quite a active debate about form-based code. I'll just say one thing about that. The form-based code district, I think what Anna was maybe passing around was the map of the Littleton Village Common form-based code outline. And it does include some parcels that are even deeper than 255 feet, the kind of area that we're looking at for this project, because we did consider some parcels that were that deep. And all the form-based code says that you can have buildings behind a first row of buildings along the street. Primarily residential, that was the way we had programmed it and thought about, increasing housing capacity. So that's not, so the proponents can propose those buildings that we see on 100, 1300, et cetera. That's not, that's totally compliant or legal to do, to propose buildings behind a first row of buildings. Our concern, one of our concerns remains is that the buildings primarily along the street still fundamentally faces towards the pedestrian alley and not on King Street. But just wanted to address the question about what form-based code was. I'll share my screen. It's late. I know it's late. I'll be very quick. And a lot has already come up, so I'm not gonna belabor any of this. I'll try to just speed through this very quickly. This is about 9 slides, and I'll try to fly through this quickly. I do want to acknowledge the design team has made putting a lot of effort. As a designer myself, seeing all the work since the 8th or so. It's a lot of work. They worked to make the buildings, the 3 buildings, smaller in scale. They've increased the number of primary massings. It technically exceeds the limit of 3, but we think it's acceptable. Heights reduced. There's some architectural features that are added that are more in line with kind of the rural character of Littleton. There are a couple of front doors added at the corners, and there's a lot of thought placed on the landscape improvements, etc. And I do want to mention, I didn't get the chance to say it last time, the ways that the project is compliant. As well, such as, for example, notably that the frontage build out along King Street meets the minimum 60%, right? There are setting buildings along King Street there, and there's a mix of retail and residential uses, could be really rich. So I do want to credit the team for that. I'll just cut to the chase. What are the remaining concerns? I've already alluded to one. We still would recommend that the buildings prioritize their fronts towards King Street. I'll get into that in a second. I included this map here because this is the Village Common Form-Based Code District. This is the kind of what the town came to consensus would be the Village Common District, right? If this project was outside of this district, I don't think that front question would be so important. But the town has decided that what they believe to be, the future vision for the town common would encompass all of the blue here, and that does squarely encompass this project in question. Comment number 2, vary the size of buildings along King Street. I'll get to that in a second. And number 3, we think there's still some opportunity to reduce the size and scale of the garage building 1300. It's not changed from the original design. Even, a reduction in height of, say, 6 feet or so. We've given design recommendations on doing that. Why face the street? I'm sorry, not gonna get into all the bullet points here. We can imagine why it's important to face the street. But I'll just say that, you know, many of the town commons and village centers around Littleton, like Ayer, West Acton, Concord, you know, they work because there's a shared understanding that the buildings face the street, they beautify, they activate the most public of all spaces in the town common, which is the street. You know, they are privately owned public spaces, alleys, etc. But you know, nothing's more public than the actual public street and the primary civic space, right? The common park, the King Street, Great Road, etc. And so we think it would be a missed opportunity if this project doesn't reinforce that and, you know, continue to activate and, you know, beautify the truly public realm of the common. So again, recommendation 1, prioritize the front, orient the facades towards King Street. Some of this have already come up. The proponents have, you know, again, sort of massaged the massing to make it more pedestrian scale from King Street. They've added a couple of, you know, doors at the corners, at a few select corners, but you know, primarily the remainder of that front is not really a front. Fundamentally, you know, the glass is transparent, yes, but they're display windows. You don't actually see, you know, the life of the activity, a restaurant inside, or shoppers, or what have you. You know, you see like 3 feet in, and then the doors. There are a couple of doors that does open out to King, but you know, they're discrete. Like right here, there's a door here that's, you know, kind of hidden. Right there, there's one. They're not integrated with the storefront system, and we would like, you know, really to appear like an inviting front door, you would integrate that with the storefront system. And then again, without a front entry, you know, for the majority of that, you know, 165 feet, with, you know, there's really no reason for anyone to walk along King Street, right? And again, and then you know, and as you know, I have already alluded to, and you've seen, there's again, you know, I want to give credit to the landscape architects. A lot of thought into placing benches, you know, providing more pedestrian amenities, bike racks, etc. But it's a little bit, what is it, missing the tree for the forest or something like that, where, you know, they're still fundamentally not facing the front because, you know, you don't go into a building crossing a lawn, right? And so, again, it is true that, and the team had brought this up, that the King Street can be loud and busy, and I think, Mark, you had mentioned you wouldn't want to sit with your partner facing King Street because of that. You know, there are a couple of comments to address that. You know, one, King Street can be different in the future. Part of this project, I hope, is meant to transform King Street, is to domesticate it, traffic calming. One of the ways, of course, we're doing that is narrowing the lanes, adding bike lanes. Another is adding on-street parking. I really do hope that the town pursues that avenue. It is truly a game changer. Urbanistically, it's not an understatement to say that, you know, all of the active main streets that we all know and love around Littleton, Massachusetts, often have on-street parking because not just because they provide access from the car to the store, but they calm traffic. You see life. There's foot traffic. There's people going from they're what's called eyes on the street. They create a safer environment because you know there are people in public. The other thing we recommend, one of the concerns that the project team has is that, again, the King Street is very busy and loud. We would recommend setting back the buildings more, which you can. The red is the current distance from the front face of the closest point or pinch point to the curb right now. Of course, this would look different if there was on-street parking. But you can set it back more, have more of a buffer, have more plantings that help, you know, create that sort of more nested eating dining area that maybe hopefully everyone would feel comfortable eating and facing a much more quiet quieter King Street. This project on the bottom, I've alluded to before, is good reference for the distance that feels comfortable. I really encourage everyone to visit this. It's 10 minutes south of the Common. And just walking here, and you really feels like a much more calm space along a state road 111 with pocket parks that are not dissimilar to the pocket parks that are being proposed for this project. Two other quick comments. This may seem small, but this was actually brought up earlier by a few on the board. I think porches. Porches are really important. They're historic to many of the buildings, both residential and commercial, to Littleton. They signal entry, they provide cover from the elements, they're an architectural feature that's innate to farmhouses. We think there's opportunities to add some porches, particularly in the recessed areas in the front. Again, reinforcing this as the front. And lastly, we recommend putting the front along King Street, but that's not necessarily to the detriment of this really interesting alley space, this pedestrian way that the proponents have been thinking about. We recommend, again, if you do put the front along King Street, this alley could take on a slightly different identity that could still be enriching to the whole project. You can have your active green on the left there, the big public plaza space that should be there. That's awesome. And then the central space here, it could be more of a linear park that is also sort of a service alley. If someone mentioned needing to put fire trucks through this, it takes on a bit more of a service-oriented road, and you can still have residents come out, walk their dogs, read. You can have visitors. There could still be a few moments. There could be double-sided restaurants that open out there. We agree that dual-sided retail is very challenging. We're not saying you have to have dual-sided retail everywhere. We're saying put the front on King Street. And then there could be a few back doors and then a few secondary entrances along that alley. So there are other examples that this really interesting alley could take on. Another is the residential use that could have ground floor units, even increasing your residential units, have little yards, stoops, and sort of much more of a residential character that complements the more active front along King Street. So we really believe that there are ways of what is it called? Having our cake and eating it too. Two more slides. We think that the three buildings along King, they're all very similar in terms of footprint, scale, height. Even if one of them just broke into two, it would dramatically change the cadence. You go from large, large, large to large, medium, small, large. I know that's a little bit easier said than done. Retail, we recognize that some of the retail expands in sizes, but there's probably a moment where you could have a 4,500 square feet retail, and then the rest could still be, these very flexible, large retail boxes. Again, when Maren came to us asking us to do design review, she essentially said at the end, how do you turn a good project, or we would like to hear how your recommendations for turning a good project into a great project. This is an example, a fairly simple example of that. And finally, we don't have to keep litigating 1300. We do think that it's important is there some way to bring down the height just a little bit? It's carrying excess parking from future phases, because some of that will move back to the future phases. It is, as the proponents said, largely invisible from King Street, so that really helps. But it is still visible from the gaps between the buildings, and it's a very bulky building that's pretty close to King Street. Is there anything that could be done? And I pinned behind this, I'm not going to go into the same set of comments that we had last time, suggestions for bringing down the size scale and the perceived scale of the building. So that's it, I think. Let me know if you have any questions. I know it's really late.
Thank you. I am interested in the development team's feeling about you remaking their pedestrian whatever, I don't know what you're calling it, into an alley, I think that's, it's not convincing to me. But the other thing is about the parking. Why is it a problem to have more parking spots? I mean, the form-based code has minimum parking spots, but it doesn't, I don't believe it proscribes more parking spots.
That's correct. There's a minimum. So you can have more. That's not we're not saying that's not allowed. We're recommending some strategies to bring down the scale of 1,300, and one of that is transferring some of the excess parking to the future phases that it's currently parking. But yes, you can have more than the minimum.
Okay. Those were my comments. Anything else?
I have one comment.
Yeah.
I think the proposal that they just showed us tonight, all the improvements that they made, are 100 times better than downtown air. The picture that he showed us was downtown air. This is way better than accenting off of downtown air, which has no outdoor seating, if you noticed.
No.
Nothing was there. There's no place to sit and eat. This is 100 times better than what he showed, than what he presented to us.
Street downtown air is two-sided.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of empty space on the other side of King Street.
Okay.
Anyway,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think that's it for our presentations of our consultants. I think we probably do need to open it up to anyone in the audience who has comments, limit them to 2 minutes. Yes, George.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. George Sanders, 72 Glaywood, Littleton here. I have concern that we drew the developer a curveball here tonight about this parking. And I feel that you really don't want to ruffle the feathers of the state DOT here. They said long ago that no parking, diagonal parking. And if you did, you say you want to take over the highway that the state has control of, they're going to make you put the money into whatever you plan on doing if they gave you that authority to do so. You don't have space across the street to take property by domain. It appears that you want to have the developer to take and move his property back so that you can put diagonal parking along there. Then you got to put the bike strip along there. Then you got to put the 2 lanes in over there. When would this developer start building if you're going to pursue this with the state? If I was the state and you put the request into me, I'd throw it over in a file and let it sit there. Because it's nonsense. They've been dealing with highways, and that highway that's coming through there that they have control of, where's the town is going to come up with money to now put in here, take by domain, and fix what you want on the street here? You expect the developer to do what you want done now? No. They shouldn't have to pay for what you want now and tell them to keep that in mind as an independent issue that you want to consider putting diagonal parking along the street there.
I think George, I think your comments are well taken. First of all, we weren't talking about diagonal parking, but secondly, it does not appear, what the issue was is there's 2 competing issues. Number 1, the Mass DOT, and number 2, the desire to activate King Street the buildings along King Street. One of the best things to do would be to put in that parking. And you are correct. It is not going to be accomplished, at least at this phase of the project.
Well, I just think that with all due consideration, I think I sit here and listen to you all come up and tell the developer what you don't like about what they've done. And they went back and they've made sincere effort to try to conform with what you're asking them to do. Now, you talk about the coal-based coal. When we passed that in the town of Littleton, this was a typical add-on for 410 and this project of 550. When you did all the study, you did all the study for the common area of the town of Littleton. You did not go into project as to what's going to be built on that project over there.
I agree.
Or that land over there. So I think in all fairness, you need to give due consideration where due consideration is due, in terms that this developer has put in money here and he's trying to build up what he thinks that is best, what he would like to do for the best of Littleton and so forth. And I think as people are working very diligently in trying to do what we are asking them to do. A lot of time when we put stuff down in writing, you should never put nothing down in writing and say it never can change. It can change. And to put in and say it never will require a waiver. You won't issue a waiver. There are things that you put in and you find out later it doesn't work. And we need to make adjustment. Sometimes we have things put in place and because we don't want to tear it out like they did at the point over here, because the walkway needed to be 36 for a handicapped chair to go through. And it was so close that you could get one through, but the fact was the state waived it. Said, no, you don't have to tear that out. Go ahead and do what you're gonna do there. That's what the guy did. He put the roof up there and put it in. But I find that listen here tonight, especially when they went back and they put forth a good effort in trying to conform to our wishes. And it seemed like to me, it doesn't get less, it gets more. The need for them to go back and make adjustment is make adjustment and make adjustment. We're better than that. We should be giving them some instructions here to try to get this project moving along. When you talk about the house and so forth, in the first phase, they talk about 44 units, so that you're obligated to get 10% out of it. Every time they build units, you're obligated to get your 10% out of it. But what I understand is that they want to take all the housing, which is the 800 units that they're going to put on the 850 here, and they're going to advance the town their portion. And they're supposed to be going to put everything over there in the 410 over there, because they got a nonprofit that's going to take in there, and they're supposed to be giving the deep senior housing over there as well. But I tell you, we need to get our act together here and put things down here. And another thing, if we got to change in the hotel, I don't know exactly where it's going to go there, but now I hear one member say they're down to 6 or 7 units, now it's still 150. What's the scoop? They're going to build a hotel for 6 or 7 rooms, or they're going to build it for 150? Do we not know that?
No.
We don't know what they're going to build.
There's not been a proposal.
Well, how did we come up with 67?
Truthfully, I think there was a typo.
Okay. I was also wondering, because the rooms are it doesn't matter how many rooms for the stormwater, it's just the area of
Exactly. Yeah, we need to respect the time.
Yes, so George, time's up. I appreciate your comments. I very much appreciate your comments, and I think that
we gotta do a better job.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. Joanne.
I'm Joanne Deary from Harwood Avenue. I really appreciate the changes that you made that vary the I think it's called the massing, and you said you kind of exemplify the buildings. That's good. I hope that you'll listen to the comments from Jesse Yang. This town was incorporated in 1715. It's been around for a long time, and it will be around for many more hundreds of years, we hope. And this development is going to be like the lead into our town. It's part of our town common. So I really think that varying the size of the buildings, that will look a lot better. It will look a lot better in 100 years. And I think having more of the entries on the King Street side, we have to do that. I mean, it won't be part of our town if we don't do that. It'll just like have its back turned to our town. That, I think, is what the bait and switch was. You know, I spend a lot of time down at the West Acton development. The West Acton Creamery is there. There's a little tavern there. There's a fish store. And we really thought that that's what it was going to look like. But what you've proposed, it doesn't look like that. It's not like that. And one of the slides that Jesse Yang put up showed the distance of the building fronts in the West Acton development to the roadway. And it's much better. It makes it, as Mr. Yang said, there'd be no reason for anyone to walk on the sidewalk the way it is right now. So I think you've come a little way, but you need to go farther. I'm sorry, but you just do. I mean, this is our town and it's going to be here for a long time. As far as the big building in the back, which I guess is mainly parking, I agree with Mr. Yang that we shouldn't pre-make parking for future parts of this development that aren't being done right now, because as one of the board members pointed out, maybe those spaces will change or not happen. So why make lots of extra parking for those future phases when maybe they aren't going to happen? So I think you could reduce the size of that building. And as far as parking along the street, that will make a big difference. It slows the traffic down, makes it much more pedestrian friendly. They have parking along the street in the West Acton development. West Acton was able to like take back control from the state of that road. If they can do it, so can Littleton. And they did it in Air, they've done it in Groton, it can be done. And it makes the street safer. It's not just gonna improve this development, but it lets the town make the street safer for pedestrians. I mean, we just had a pedestrian fatality, it's horrific. So we have to get that. And I think if we do get that, having that on-street parking, by my count, there'd be maybe 18 or 20 parking spaces there. That's your people that are gonna use the doors that you're gonna put in those buildings on the side that faces King Street. So, like, good work, but you're not done. That's my feeling. Thank you very much. I really appreciate your work. Thank you.
Mr. Zeldin.
Full confession that I'm one of the birth fathers for form-based code. And at the end of my remarks, I'll tell you a little bit of the history very briefly. But here I want to say to the development group that I know you're working very hard, but give it a C+ best, because I don't think it has anything to do with your ability. I think it has to do with what you're used to. To me, there are three parts, and they're the one that's in conflict is mainly created by the emphasis on what I would call the retail, what you're calling the retail side. The evidence to me is very clear from the data available from a variety of associations that Littleton, including taking into account, these analyses are not done with just Littleton, they're done with habits. And another thing I want to point out to you, I'm not talking about an organization or a point that involves the point. The point's a totally different place. It's going to be very valuable to you in reasons that I'll try to get to real fast. My point is that the top things that really would work for Littleton are one or two or maybe three restaurants, maybe three. A high-end one requires parking immediately, not necessarily by whoever drives up, but it needs parking. The other is grab and go. And the third is casual family restaurant experience. The other kind of business, so in other words, restaurants take the top priority. The second, believe it or not, are health clubs, specialty grocery stores if you're lucky to find one, and that's about it. What I suggest to you is, what was interesting to me about your point of view is during your presentation, you never showed your idea about the connection between the very large buildings that are planned for the majority of the 800 units that you're planning for this. You didn't show that this is a place of residence. It's the major component here. It is not retail. The retail, and I'll just say restaurants and modest retail, should be driven by the use of the captive market that you already have with the 800 units when they come. So my suggestion is that look at your business model and see if you can back off what I would call the linear, boring, inappropriate construction of what you put up to in the last couple of nights. Now, form-based code. When we did form-based code, there was a discussion to have more than one form of form-based code. And the reason it was put on the side is because of the process that form-based code had to go through to put the rescue in for Great Road. However, nothing would stop this board, or nothing would stop this town from coming up with what we'll call variations on the theme, I'll call it. But if you think working with Dot is tough, working with changes or additions to the code, that's the way to do it. We have form-based code you've implemented here. I think if the emphasis put on residency, a lot of the parking issues, a lot of the other crowding issues, the design issues begin to offer solution. So let me suggest that you encourage the team to place their emphasis on increasing residence conveniences. That will also draw folks from Littleton, like myself, who are A, within walking distance, and B, those who want to take the drive and see what the excitement might be about. But beyond that, the retail formation that you've seen so far to me is out of scale. It's neither big nor small, it's just inappropriate. We need the housing. Thank you very much.
Who's next? Anyone? If that is.
Me.
Oh, okay.
Judy Reed, Pamela Way.
Okay.
As a resident, trying to cover over work stuff. I'm interested in, I haven't been able to speak at any of these. So I would really be interested in the residents. My son is in his 20s and about to graduate college, and I really want him to get an apartment. He's used to being on a campus. He's used to having everything close by. Even me, if I'm looking at where I'm going to stand next, if I have to move out of my apartment that I have now, I would love to be on a place that I could walk to a restaurant. I like your idea of grab and go. You know, you can talk about making it boutique shops and stuff, but if I'm living there, I want to be able to do everything right on your property. So that's my little 2 cents.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that being said, thank you for all the comments. Pardon?
There's more.
Oh, I have another, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your hands. Okay, who's next?
Hi, Margot Bloomstein, 7 Wilson Lane. I really appreciate the changes that you made. I think that you heard a lot of the frustration I think that we were voicing last time. As Joanne said, I want to see you go further in responding to that frustration because and I certainly think that many of the points that Jesse raised in the UTIL's evaluation make so much sense. I heard you say how this is built around a common and there's like that common green space. we already, and it's a community too, we already are a community though that this could augment and extend in a good way. We're not looking for something to come in and distract from that and distract from the common that's already there. And I think that's one of the reasons why we need to activate that space along King Street. There's already like the main attraction there that is the common. I don't know how much time like in doing user research and all that you spend in Littleton, but that's where, you know, right now we have rallies there, like weekly it seems. That's where like people come and speak, like local legislators and all. That's where like the big Christmas tree lighting is. That's where the Hanukkah menorah lighting is. That space deserves buildings facing it because people are already facing it in our daily lives. And what this could do on that space could be very similar to what we have in West Acton. And I say we because as a Littleton resident, I spend a lot of time going to West Acton because there's that playground there that was already there. And then they built more stuff facing out to it. And it's set back a little bit. And I always feel like such a winner when I'm like, I can get a parking spot right in front. That's awesome. And then I can zip across to the playground with my daughter. I can come back, grab ice cream. We sit out in front in kind of public space chairs that are not just a space where somebody's going to scoop me off because I didn't buy my coffee right there. So I think that that is something to consider. And I appreciate, Anna, I really appreciate everything that you were saying in advocating for making sure that it is safe and making sure that we do adhere to our form-based code because we have it for a reason. And I think if we're saying that it was never intended to accommodate things of other scales or the future, why have a code if not to allow for vision of the future? If we want to pass amendments to it, that's one thing, but we shouldn't be doing it on an ad hoc basis of like granting exceptions to it. I did have one tactical question, sort of about public use of ostensibly private spaces of like those different like retailers and restaurants and whatnot in there. Where are the public spaces in the layout for like bathrooms and whatnot for people that are there? And it can't, I'll sit down, but I just want to say, I don't want to just hear like, well, you can go into a coffee shop, go into a restaurant, because that's not always the case. That's not always allowed.
This space does not have a public restroom component, to be clear. And many of these shopping centers of all different types don't necessarily already have, of larger scales don't always have them. In this particular scale, we are only, I think in this particular one, 70,000 square feet, this one. There isn't an accommodation.
But that, you'll change that, right?
Yeah, we've been talking about that and seeing where we can fit something like that.
Yeah, I mean, because I think if people want to come like with their kids and be hanging out.
Yeah, or if there's a concert on the green or something like that, we're looking into that for sure. We understand.
Okay.
So,
we discussed.
Yeah.
So,
okay, good.
Yeah.
That's, I think, maybe that's basic user research, but we're gonna need to go to the bathroom.
Sure.
I want to, Gretchen Webster, Bulkley Road. I want to reiterate so that we can grasp what our expectation was of this space. And that is very similar to the feel, the vibe, the aesthetic of West Acton. Likewise, if you think about downtown Groton, years ago, the Groton Inn burned down to the ground. They didn't build a big new fancy motel to replace it. They built something that had a New England aesthetic. What I see presented here today doesn't have to be Littleton, Massachusetts. It could be North Carolina. It could be Texas. It could be Arizona. What makes this New England? What makes this look like our town that has that deep history and the roots where people walked to and the revolution to participate in it, where they built houses that we still own one that was built in 1700s. What makes this a New England retail experience and housing experience? That's what I would challenge you to go back to the drawing board. C+ can be improved. I heard a lot of, this is better, this is better. It's better, sure, but it could be more, and it was not what we expected when we signed up for form-based code and really, truly, intentionally are seeking to transform downtown Littleton so it can be a space that we're proud of. Thank you.
Please, this is the last.
Hi, Kate Arcieri, Pine Road. So I want to reiterate and thank Anna for, I think, trying to focus on what voters thought they were voting for when this went through. I have great hope for this project. We heard a lot at our town meeting about prior feelings of bait and switch. You guys are probably sick of hearing that phrase, but as a community, that's something folks have felt like they've experienced previously. And so I think the really important thing to focus on here is that we as a community were voting on a pedestrian-focused design. And the moment you turn buildings away from the street where the pedestrians are, and you turn it into where the parking is, it's not a pedestrian-focused design. It's now a multi-building, suburban, auto-focused strip mall. And so that's not what we voted for, and it's also not what will be successful in Littleton. And we really want, I personally, and there's a lot of talk about this right now in this town, right now in this moment online, and people really want this to be successful, but they want it to be what we voted for. And so I appreciate, again, Anna trying to focus us back on what we actually voted for. The other piece is that we've talked some about the pedestrian issues on King Street. So again, I'm not sure how much time you guys have spent in Littleton, but in recent years, the 495 Route 2 interchange has become a hotspot for Mass DOT. There have been terrible casualties there, multiple pileups, but even small accidents there constantly that shut down 495. And because of Waze and all of the other ways that we all get around them, we are flooded now in our small downtown with all of these people who are not Littleton residents who are maneuvering through our town. And they drive like maniacs. And I want to believe that those are not the Littleton residents. So let me keep that dream. But they drive crazily through down King Street. And so those additional traffic calming measures and those additional, as Jesse was describing it, those ways of making it so that this is a human-centered design from a safety perspective are incredibly important. It's part of the reason the traffic piece is part of the reason people are so concerned about this, because we already have such a problem as a small downtown where we are flooded with non-residents whenever traffic on 495 and Route 2 gets insane, and whenever there's an accident and it's closed down, which happens very often. But then there's the safety piece where you have all these people we all understand the frustration. You never intended to be in Littleton. You certainly never intended to be going through our little downtown. Now you are, and you're already late and you're frustrated. And what we need to make sure we're not doing is making that less safe for Littleton residents. So thank you.
Thank you. Okay. With all that being said, we will continue this hearing to our regularly scheduled February meeting, which is
February 12th.
Oh, I thought we were doing the apartments.
Yes.
We are. Okay.
We'll kick that one off.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, may I make a comment before we close? I have been talking to people about the Tuttle House, the very old house that we expressed a desire to move it. I just want to suggest that the Historical Commission is willing to allow it to be moved as long as it stays on site. So I want to make a suggestion that it be moved somewhat towards the gas station corner to get it out of the way of the hotel if that's an issue. And it can be integrated, it could be, because the common has other old houses around it, it could be part of the common and it could be a lead into the site. I think that would be a good solution for that building.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
So do you need a motion on the continuing the hearing or?
Do we
So
need a
which
motion?
one would you rather do first?
So, we have 3 hearings going on now. We have the stormwater, we have the
Definitive subdivision.
definitive subdivision, and we have the site plan review. So, may we do them all at once?
Okay, yes, but between phase 1 commercial and phase 1 residential, that public hearing will can open on February 12th. Would
Yes.
you rather turn to the residential first, or would you rather have the first?
Let's do the residential first.
So will just be an introduction to it.
Well, what we apparently are being given imminently the drawings for that. So everyone look on their on the page for it. So that would be,
For that, and then this could be at 7:30.
since it's the same people, let's
Back to back.
yeah, let's do it, 40 minutes or something. So 6:40 and then
7:30.
yeah.
Okay.
It's gonna go late anyway.
Yeah.
If we post it for say 7:15, then you can always push it later.
Yeah, no, I mean, I would post it, so we don't have any dead zone. So I would like to hear a motion to continue these 3 hearings to February 12th at 7:15.
Second.
All in favor?
On the 12th, we have this meeting room again.
Great. I think this works well with this screen. Okay, thank you, everyone.
Thank you. It's off subject, but. No, it's not.
It's on the table.
Oh, I've been informed that we need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn, second. Aye.
Aye.
Oh, no, I want to say.